gold is going to be, in my opinion, the backbone of this new system. It will be 100%.
If gold becomes the backbone of a new global system, then the dollar is finished. BRICS knows it. Central banks know it. They're not warning you, but Andy Schectman will. In the next few minutes, he'll expose the biggest shift in global finance in 100 years and what it means for your future. Miss this, and you'll miss the warning.
This legitimizes the yuan, and it's not replacing the dollar, gold. But what it is replacing, in my mind, is what stands behind these currencies. What would stand behind the dollar would be the Treasury, which is losing demand, which is losing trust, which has been weaponized. And instead, these entities now will be able to stand for delivery in gold. So what I believe is happening is that China is building and facilitating the rails of this new system, using the yuan first and foremost to run the beta test. And they are opening up, their plan is to open up a series of multi-jurisdictional gold vaults. First one is under construction, or maybe just was built. It's almost done, I believe. And that would be in Hong Kong. The next one is due to be built in Saudi Arabia. And from that point forward, they will be built all throughout the Belt Road, through Africa primarily, and Asia, and eventually into South America. And the plan is to have all of the nations that will be part of this program deposit gold in all of the vaults, so that the gold will be held in multi-jurisdictional vaults, not in one, like the New York Federal Reserve or the Bank of England would hold gold for the COMEX, or for the LBMA, and the New York Federal Reserve for the COMEX. So they're building an ecosystem, if you will, an ecosystem that will allow for instant settlement for transactions, and then trading or any imbalances would settle in gold and would be deliverable or would be able to be stored amongst these vaults. This is a very, very, very big deal. It is a huge deal, because it's one thing to push back against the BRICS and say they're not significant enough. It's another thing to say that any country that would like to, at this point, trade with China using digital yuan over a bridge network, like Brazil is selling their corn to China, and they are doing so for the digital yuan. That yuan is immediately convertible into gold. And gold is going to be, in my opinion, the backbone of this new system. It will be 100% the backbone of this new system. It will, the vaults will be the spinal system, or the skeletal system of the new payment system, the new settling system outside the dollar. Gold will be what will act as the reserve. It will be what's standing behind, or the integrity of it. And it's becoming increasingly obvious that this is exactly what is happening. And then when you take a look at all of the gold that these nations are buying, it becomes a little bit more, I think you could say, concerning, at least for the West. And the news that we're getting right now out of, I think I just read it on Reuters, is that central banks right now are increasingly bypassing all of the international markets to buy gold. In fact, Vince Lancy was just talking about this the other day. The World Gold Council says that I think it's 19 out of 36 central banks that were surveyed said they're now buying gold directly from artisanal miners, right from the miners in their home country. We've talked at length about China flying around the world and buying gold and silver directly from countries in South America, the doré and the concentrate, which completely disintermediates the marketplace. No one knows how much they're buying. And so they're buying it directly from the miners in their home country, and are now flying around the world buying it directly from Latin American miners before it hits the marketplace. They have been joining in with the West and suppressing the paper price in the West with paper, and then buying it all around the world at cheaper prices and in ways that do not reflect a change in price. The only real change in price happens in the West. So if they push the paper down in the West and stand for delivery all around the world, that's exactly what they're doing. And so, this is an accelerating global war for dominance in commodities. There's no question about it. And this is the kind of thing that will put even greater stress on places like the LBMA, where these countries used to export their metal to London, where it would be held, and London would pay for it, and then it would be on that exchange. Now they're selling it directly to countries like China. So the first point I want to make with all of this is that we are seeing, instead of going through with the BIS, trying to integrate into the Western system and do so in a very cooperative way, which I was a little shocked that the BRICS even wanted to do that. In fact, last year at their meeting, they talked about integration with the IMF, the BIS, the United Nations, even the WHO, and but wanted changes in all of these organizations to be more equitable for the countries in the global South. When the BIS, which is a Western institution, pulled the plug, which amounted to espionage, I think they reevaluated everything and are now keeping things much closer to the vest. When Trump shone a light upon the BRICS nations, even through his, the before he was elected, saying that this is a threat, I think they decided to be very quiet about it. And China said, we'll take the lead on maturing the ecosystem. The ecosystem first is the cross-border payment system, which is now fully operational and connected to these Asiatic countries and the Middle Eastern countries, amongst the BRICS countries as well. It's the rails of the settlement in gold that is being built right now by the Shanghai Metals Exchange that is directly, I think, challenging the West. And in fact, even the price setting of the West. We just saw a new vault be built, a new metals exchange be built or is under construction in St. Petersburg right now. The Moscow vault has seen an 80% increase in volume year over year. The exchanges in Dubai, in Shanghai, the new BRICS exchange, they're all going to be connected to this new ecosystem. And these countries will, in other words, trade with one another over this bridge system in their central bank digital currencies without any SWIFT interference or acknowledgement. The SWIFT won't know how much business is going back and forth, and then they will settle imbalances in gold. So that's what's happening over there. And I think someone in the Trump administration very, very early on explained to President Trump what was happening. And if I had to guess and I'm going to tell you what I think is going to happen, and then I'll back it up. What I think they're trying to do is reshore as much gold as they possibly can, revalue it at some point, and peg it to the U.S. Treasury. And I'll explain why I believe that and the significance of it in a moment. So since November, the United States has become a net importer of gold. And since the election, since before he took office, but was elected. And it's as if someone said this has to be priority. Maybe he was watching the videos that I've been doing all these years saying, look, this is happening. The vaults are being bled dry across the globe. And the central banks, primarily the central banks of the global South, are literally standing for delivery in a level that no one's ever seen before. It's become very obvious over the last year or two that the banks are accumulating gold, the central banks, and not being open or forthright about it. Now, long before we start talking about the central banks going directly to the artisanal miners or buying doré and concentrate from the miners in Latin America, it was assumed that everything they bought would be reported to the IMF. The IMF, you are supposed to report if it's bought by a government entity. You're supposed, and if it's 995 or better pure, I believe 999 or 995. So if the gold that is imported isn't that pure, like the doré, like the concentrate, that they pay double what the West will pay, send it all the way back to China and refine it themselves, not reportable. If the People's Liberation Army buys instead of the PBOC, doesn't matter its fineness, not reportable. If the proxy banks, on behalf of a central bank or a sovereign wealth fund, purchase gold, not reportable. And even the stuff that they were buying directly for the PBOC or for Saudi Arabia's government was supposed to be reported. They were both flagged at least once or twice by the import-export numbers. Hey, you guys didn't report. Sorry, we made a mistake. Even that wasn't reported. And then you look at all the gold that China produces year over year, the largest producer in the world and the second largest producer of silver. And when you think about that, if they are the largest producer and the second largest producer of silver, what the hell are they flying all around the world for and buying doré and concentrate and buying directly from miners around the world? Why? Why would they be doing that? They're doing that because they understand this is a long game. And they are trying to secure as much as they can in all of the world's commodities for their next growth spurt. I believe that. They're thinking a year ahead, 2 years ahead, 5 years ahead. We think in terms of days or minutes. It's a big mistake. China bought the London Metals Exchange as an example. That's the base metals. They're building warehouses in China to house the metal that's traded in London for the contracts. So they're buying up everything they can. They build the largest infrastructure project in human history, largely through underdeveloped countries who are resource rich. And they build their infrastructure, the roads and the railroad tracks and the bridges and the maritime channels. They build the oil refineries and the gold and silver mines and the ability to bring it to market, and they get a piece of it. Everything that they are doing is in an effort to secure future production and anything that isn't nailed down in the way of global commodities. It's a huge deal, right? So I think someone got in Trump's ear and said that. Because we have become a net importer of gold. More gold has been delivered into the United States, somewhere in the neighborhood of $100 billion that we know of since the beginning of the year, that we know of. And I will tell you, I'll bet dollars to donuts that they are buying it all over the place in ways that are very, very covert. I would not be surprised if Secretary Bessent, through the Exchange Stabilization Fund, is behind buying much of this gold that is being delivered to COMEX, and in a way that if it's national security related, it can be hush-hush. I have a feeling that they are being bought through proxy banks like JP Morgan or Citibank. I have a feeling that they're buying all around the world, even in places like Switzerland, and haven't brought it all home yet. They are securing all they can. And it was all done under the guise or the ruse of tariffs. A little bit of arbitrage ain't the case. That was a good ruse. But if they knew what our real intentions were, I believe it would have become much, much harder to bring back the amount of gold that they have.
The world is moving. But are you? If you don't want to be blindsided when the system resets, stay informed. Hit the like button, subscribe, and smash the bell icon so you never miss an update from Andy Schectman and the real financial truth they don't want you to hear. Your future could depend on it.